Still in lesson 811, and this video is going to go over prompts 8.3 and 8.4 because it's looking at writing equations of trigonometric functions that have both phase shifts and period changes. One of them is based off of being given a situation, being given words. 8.4 is looked at being given a graph. To help us out, though, we're going to go back to something that was on our notes way back in chapter 2, and that was this right here. This is the general form when it comes to transforming trigonometric equations. We are going to have A as your amplitude. You're going to have H as your right-left movement. As always, we call it for trig functions phase shifts. Your K is your up and down movement, and we call that for trig functions, your what is going to be your midline. B, we know it deals with the formula period is 2 pi over B, but we need to also remember what is B. A is a vertical stretch. As always, it's either a vertical stretch, if it's greater than 1, or between 0 and 1, it's going to be a vertical compression. B is a horizontal stretch or a horizontal compression. So in words, we can think of it as it's the number of periods in an interval of 2 pi. So that's what it means in words, which is really important to understand, and it's important to understand the formula. So there's two things to keep in mind. A lot of people just kind of focus on this formula and they forget to focus on what that number means. So B is the number of periods in an interval of 2 pi. We apply that by saying, okay, well that means the period is going to be, as an equation, 2 pi over B. They're the same thing. One is in words and one is an equation. Keep that in mind. All right, so we have here the graph of y equals sine of x. So I'm actually dealing with this over here, and I have to figure out, okay, what's going on. It is going to be stretched vertically by a factor of 2. Okay, so vertical stretch, that means it is going to be your A value. It's going to be vertically stretched by a factor of 2, so that means I'm going to have a y equals, and I'm going to have an A of 2. We're good so far. It does say it is a sine graph, so I'm going to write down sine. I'm going to do my bracket. So I have bracket, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fill in the rest. Boom, boom. I know it's going to be either x minus or x plus, but the general form is x minus. I'm going to close the bracket, and I know I'm going to have a plus k out there. I'm just going to leave it alone. All right, so it makes 3 complete cycles in an interval 2 pi. Now that sounds very similar to what I've been saying before, and that's going to be dealing with our definition of B. B is the number of periods, or the number of cycles in an interval of 2 pi. So this right here, that's telling us that B is equal to 3. So boom, B is going to be 3. It's shifted up. Wait, so up. So I'm left with either H or K. Well, up is going to be your K value, and so that's going to be a plus 4. And let's see, it's shifted to the right. Well, I only have one more left, and that's your right-left movement is your phase shift pi unit. So the question is this going to be minus pi or is it going to be plus pi? Those are the two things we have to figure out. The original formula says x minus your phase shift. And so my phase shift is pi units. So it's going to be x minus pi. Remember, whenever you're grouped in a parentheses with a variable, it's always the opposite of what you see. And now we're done. That's it. That is what we're looking at for this one. Now, let's move on to 8.4. So in 8.4, we're looking at order of operations and horizontal shifts. Now, I don't like to call it order of operations and horizontal shifts. I mean, it's been a while, but we do know, we're hoping that if we look at a trig function, and we are looking at the graph of a trig function, there's a certain thing we need to do, either for graphing it or writing the equation from a graph. So anytime I see a graph of a trig function, you know what I think of? I think it's really, really important that we follow a map. Trademark, Mr. Rainsburg. And so we have midline, amplitude, then you have your phase shift, and then you have your period. If you want to graph a trig function or you're dealing with a graph of a trig function, follow a map, trademark Mr. Rainsburg, and what's going to happen is that will answer, if I do these, that will answer part A. And if I apply those to here, it will answer part B for writing the equation. So I'm just going to kind of copy this down here, and we'll kind of fill it in as we go. All right, so first off, what's my midline? And so I have midline, ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. I have a midline of y equals -3. So I have a midline of y equals -3. So I'm going to erase this k value, this plus k, and I'm going to put a -3. That was easy. Amplitude, let's see about that. How far up or down does it go from the midline? And so in this case, it goes from -3 to -1. So that's going to be an amplitude of 2. So that means my a value, let's erase that a, and let's put a 2 there. Not too bad. Phase shift. Now, it is giving us this point. It wants us to make this the starting point of our graph. So my phase shift is that it's starting at pi halves. So my phase shift is pi halves. I don't need to say it's to the right or left. If I say it's pi halves, it's positive, so I know it's going to the right. So I have x minus the phase shift, x minus my h, so x minus pi halves. Next up is your period. So a period, if we're looking at it, is one full cycle. So let's think about this for a second. I can't go to the right, doesn't fit, so I'm going to have to go to the left. And if I'm going to go to the left, I have to go until it starts to repeat. So we're from here, boom. And let's do this off to the right-hand side. You got to be good with fractions when you're dealing with radians. This is negative pi halves. And it goes to positive pi halves for one cycle. So that right there is going to be one cycle. So what's that distance from negative pi halves to pi halves? And that distance is 1 pi. So that is going to be my period, 1 pi. That doesn't mean b is pi. That means your period is pi. We use 2 pi over b equals pi. That is how we're going to have to find b. So it's b is going to be the part that's going to be a little trickier. All right, so let's put this over 1. Let's cross multiply. B times pi equals 2 pi times 1. And yep, the pi's can cancel. So I know b equals 2. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to erase this b. And we're going to put 2. And man, oh man, it is so nice to follow a map again, trademark Mr. Ainsberg. It allows us to quickly fill in what is your K, what's your A, what's your H, and what's your B. The period is one you have to remember. It's 2 pi over B to solve. But these, the main idea behind this is learning how to write an equation from a prompt with words and how to write it from a graph, follow a map, trademark Mr. Ainsberg. And then the next prompt, we will be examining how to actually